So it seems that the angelic Sons of Sanguinius have won an enormous tournament, and there's plenty of fight in an army that's far from the top tiers of 40k. Let's take a look at 4 strong army lists that did well in tournaments and the units they used to get there. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, where today we're talking Blood Angels, and in this video I thought we'd take a look through some of the strongest army lists that the boys in red, black and gold can put together. In 10th edition so far, the Blood Angels haven't really been having such a great time of it. They've been consistently hovering somewhere around the win rates of like 45-46%. Looks like it's about 46% at the moment in grand tournaments, certainly towards the lower end of armies in Warhammer 40k, though they do have some interesting options. Since the data slate, they've only won the 2 big events, and they happened over the last weekend, and otherwise, despite being a slightly lesser played faction with one of the lower win rates around, maybe haven't been doing too badly at punching up into the top tables. They do have some fun tricks that they can add to a Space Marine army, and certainly can bring a few cool things to the table. In the balanced data slate, the core Blood Angels detachment got a buff. The Sons of Sanguinius detachment is the one where the Blood Angels units got a little bit more dangerous on the charge. The version at the launch of 10th edition was +1 strength and +1 attack on the charge. It didn't seem to be enough to really compete with the Gladius or the various other Space Marine detachments in Codex Space Marines, generally performing kind of the same or worse than those ones. In the balanced data slate, Games Workshop improved it to +2 strength on the charge, which I must admit I was initially a bit skeptical as to how much it would change. It was definitely a power boost to the detachment, but was it enough to actually tip the balance and turn it from a detachment that was kind of used not really more than the Gladius and wasn't seeing much more success to one that actually stood out? It does seem though that based on the competitive lists that are doing well at tournaments, the Sons of Sanguinius really is back. Certainly some Blood Angels lists are doing absolutely fine with other detachments, but at least for these 4 major examples I found, every single one of them used the Sons of Sanguinius, which is really quite fun given it's the thematic detachment for the Blood Angels. I do feel like the +2 strength is quite a lot more meaningful in the era of the 10th edition stretched toughness chart. It really does mean that quite a lot of common Space Marine units get to some pretty interesting breakpoints. You get things like Jump Intercessors and Assault Intercessors hitting at strength 6 on the charge, so wounding toughness 3 on a 2+, and even Terminators on a 3. And it gets the common Power Fist profiles that often run on Death Company and Sergeants all the way up to a big strength 10, just so much more threatening to sort of medium armor vehicles than strength 9. Combine that with a fun lance melee damage dealer on the charge as well, and you can have one unit hitting spectacularly hard. I would perhaps say that their enhancements still tend to be a bit lackluster though, maybe points fillers perhaps more so than things that you actually go out to include, at least for the most part. For some common choices, in current Blood Angels lists, Assault Intercessors led by captains really seem to be a big thing, particularly seeing as they went down to 75 points, they kind of do stand out for the faction now given all the buffs. They might often be jumping out of Impulsors or Land Raiders to deliver them to glorious close combat. Otherwise, Lemartes with Death Company has certainly been a massive staple since the Codex came out, just a big dangerous unit that breaks virtually everything. Sanguinary Priests are quite nice. Foot Death Company with a Chaplain seem to be a bit more of a common theme now. And then combine all that with the core Space Marine options, nice scoring units, and generic strong Space Marine firepower and damage dealer squads. Let's jump into it though and talk through some Blood Angels lists. This first one was run by Azark Kerstetter, who used it to take first at Frontline Gaming's RMO 2024, going 6-0 at a 200 player tournament, which is a massive achievement, doing so with the Sons of Sanguinius, and what's more with a massive 25 Death Company as well, by far the most out of any of the lists in this video. Starting out, we've got Lemartes leading a big block of 10 Death Company Marines with jump packs, pretty much a staple there with their Inferno Pistol and Power Fist, big, fast and dangerous, and tougher than you might expect. There's another smaller Death Company block with just 5 of them, and then there's an on-foot Death Company squad with 10 of them, again with Inferno Pistols and Power Fists, all led by a Chaplain for the +1 to wound, and it looks like they're going to be delivered by the Rhino transport, a nice battlefield bunker to charge out of. There's 2 captains with Plasma Pistols and Power Fists heading up 2 squads of Assault Intercessors it looks like. Very cheap and very dangerous in this attachment with their strength boost on the charge. The rerolls going off on the captain's attacks is a particularly nice bonus, and it appears that they're going to be delivered by the Land Raider Redeemer into the midboard, a big tough transport that can threaten some mad overwatch if the opponent decides to chance to go within its range. A massive amount of scary melee there with tons of Power Fists and a bunch of Chainswords. They're supported by 3 units of scouts to score objectives, missile, sniper, chainsword and shotguns, great screening and action things, and you can't really underestimate their incidental melee either. And there's the dangerous lone threat that is the Sanguinor that we'll talk about later, and the lieutenant with the combi weapon, marking extra damage on one objective and doing annoying lone operative shenanigans, playing around with objectives and scoring. Finally, just for a little bit of anti-armor, there's a lone gladiator lancer. It means that even in a very melee-heavy list, you can't just screen one tank and just know that it's going to be safe from surviving. This thing could step up to the plate and very quickly ruin its day. Overall, looks absolutely terrifying. 2 Death Company blocks that pretty much nothing in the game is really going to be able to credibly get in the way of. Massive combat power for the points cost between those captains and assault intercessors, and a fair bit more in terms of objective support going on besides. Overall, a very cool list, and I'm sure a very high skill dependency one. There are lots of units here that can hit spectacularly hard, but if they don't capitalise on their damage output or get exposed to enemy attacks first, then it could be very painful. Focusing on some strong units, first up we have the Death Company. The jump pack ones tend to be perhaps the more common of the two run, 130 points per 5 of them, scary marine bodies that move fast. The typical loadout for them tends to be the Inferno Pistol and the Power Fist, both of which they can re-roll the hit roll for, so that's some pretty terrifying strength 8 damage, certainly in melee for 30 attacks for a maxed out squad of them, but also perhaps surprisingly more so in range than you might have guessed. They get a feel no pain type save, so maybe aren't quite as easy to kill with damage 2 weapons as they might otherwise be, and also gets to re-roll a charge roll innately, helping them get delivered to combat. Perhaps one of the most staple Blood Angels choices is a squad of 10 of those, led up by Lemartes for 110 points, a pretty godly buffing character. He secures their objective control and gives them leadership 5, hits fairly hard with the Blood Crozius with lethal hits that he'll be able to re-roll in that squad, and then gives a big nasty damage boost both in terms of damage and defense. For the damage he gives the unit lethal hits, which is a pretty big deal at punching up against tough stuff, even with the +2 strength boost, and he also has -1 damage on their attacks, meaning that the majority of things that are usually best at killing Space Marines just won't be enormously effective into them. Overall, he really is pretty amazing, and in context of the detachment buffs, it gets even nastier. On the charge, that squad of Death Company is going to be a crazy 40 Power Fist attacks, all re-rolling hits, all at strength 10 with lethal hits. There's just not that much in the game that's going to survive that kind of ferocity if you can get them into something important. It is kind of cool to see some foot Death Company Marines being run as well. They do save you a few points at 5 points less per body. Basically, you lose the jump pack, but it does mean that you can get in transports if you'd like. Again, they have access to the Power Fist and Inferno Pistol combo for massive damage up close if you can get them in. They trade out their special rule for getting a damage boost as the squad takes casualties. Could be ridiculously nasty if they were less than half strength and a few of them survived. Sustained hits too is pretty brutal there. Moving on to the next list, this one is by a Joshua McGowan, who used it to take first at CQ Exterminatus, going 4 wins and 1 draw in a mid-sized tournament of 40 players. Again, it's the Sons of Sanguinius detachment for the +1 attack and +2 strength. And cool to see Blood Angels of a very different stripe being used. This one uses absolutely no Death Company, and instead delivers a very angry force of red armoured boys into battle. Again, there's the menace that is the Sanguinor. 2 captains, 1 jump pack 1 with a power fist and heavy bolt pistol. He takes the icon of the angel, the one that forces desperate escape on falling back. Could be kind of powerful with the stratagem to consolidate into other stuff. A regular captain with heavy bolt pistol and power fist, and then a whole load of sanguinary priests, 2 of them on foot and 1 of them with jump pack. That cluster of characters is leading a fairly impressive 46 Space Marine bodies of one sort or another. There's a really big unit of assault intercessors for 150 points. I'd guess the captain on foot plus maybe a sanguinary priest are going to join that. That makes a pretty lethal squad for the cost. I'd guess they might be hitching a ride in the Land Raider Redeemer, unless that honour's going to the Blade Guard. Then there's 2 smaller units of assault intercessors with plasma pistol and power fist. A squad of 5 regular intercessors with power fist and grenade launcher, handy enough to have the sticky objective there. Then a rather brutal amount of jump intercessors, 1 big squad of 10, where I guess the captain and probably the sanguinary priest with jump pack are going to be joining there. Really quite cool to see those guys get used as mainline damage dealers. They do get a whole load of mortal wound impact hits. Finally, there's 2 units of 3 blade guard, perhaps a bit more threatening than in other detachments with +1 attack and a big strength 7 on those swords. And some good objective control with scouts, heavy bolter, chainsword and bolters on these guys. Finally, there's an impulsor with a shield dome, getting one of the squads from A to B, I don't know whether it might be the 2 units of blade guards that are going there without characters, or I guess it could be one of the assault intercessor squads, possibly with a character attached. Quite a few options for this one, not entirely sure how it would have been played. I think it is pretty cool to see that F-Force does seem to be viable when you're taking mainly guys with chainswords plus a few fighty characters though. Assault intercessors and jump intercessors seem to do the business when you're getting +2 strength and +1 attack. Sanguinary priests feature heavily in this one, 90 points for a jump pack one or 80 points on foot. They greatly help out the defense of the units, getting them a 5+ feel no pain type save, which is nice. And you get to boost the AP of melee weapons in the unit by 1, really quite nice both for chainswords of all sorts there, both the jump variety and the guys on foot. Really quite nice in combination with the detachment rules, seeing as the assault intercessors are really likely to stack a whole bunch of wounds. If you can get those wounds to AP2, then they're going to be far more general purpose and actually threaten other stuff. Speaking of which, the assault intercessors do seem to be the heroes of the battle line for the Blood Angels at the moment, and genuinely seeing use in good numbers. GW decreased the points on these guys down to 75 points. It does seem to have made them a lot more attractive. They get a whole flurry of chainsword attacks, plus a plasma pistol and power fist, and their special rule is shock assault, allowing you to reroll wound rolls of 1, or rerolling all wound rolls against units on objective markers, which is pretty powerful for any attached characters in the unit as well, as they'd get that benefit as well. They do feel like a unit that looks particularly nasty with the Red Rampage special rule, with so many volume attacks and re-rolling the wound roll, giving them lance for a +1 to wound and also lethal hits is just utterly brutal. Between that and the Sanguinary Priest for a little bit of extra AP, those chainswords should be tearing apart anything up to vehicles with 2+ saves and toughness 12. If they get the charge with all those strength 6 attacks with so many stacking buffs like that, they should probably be shredding a massive amount of wounds off a Land Raider before the power fists even get to swing. The assault intercessors seem to be really quite commonly accompanied by a captain, often with a power fist and a plasma pistol. His rites of battle give them a free stratagem per battle round, could be armor of contempt to keep them a little bit more durable, a command reroll to reroll a critical charge, or that red rampage one for the fairly godly lethal hits plus lance. As mentioned, he can benefit from those rerolls, plus he has the finest hour special rule to just give an enormous damage punch, once per game getting +3 attacks and devastating wounds, likely as a big strength 10 if he gets the charge. Very, very scary stuff there. Finally, while we're talking intercessors of all stripes, the assault intercessors with jump packs do seem to be good enough to carry a list to greatness. I feel like they're a unit that's really not too far from being pretty threatening in close combat. Really quite cheap bodies at 17 points for moving 12 inches. They get similar sort of stats to the assault intercessors, minus the rerolls thing, but they do get the mortal wound impact hits when the unit completes a charge. In theory, if you could manage to get all your models into engagement range if you had those 2 attached characters along, you'd be averaging 6 mortal wounds from that alone, never mind anything else. Again though, they just absolutely love the detachment rule plus the red rampage stratagem. For a third list that did well, there was this one by Iman Furmanchik, who used this list to go undefeated at Krakow Arena, going 4 wins and 1 draw at a 60-player tournament. It's Sons of Sanguinius once again, none of the Gladiators for the Blood Angels here. Yet again we've got the Sanguinor, and this one takes a pleasing mix of both Death Company and Assault Intercessors. And this one eschews the Land Raider Redeemer for more small transport and a bit more firepower in a couple of Gladiator Lancers. There's Lemartes leading the Big Death Company unit again with the jump packs, a small squad of them on foot with the Chaplain likely jumping out of that Rhino. Then it looks like the Importers are set up as battlefield taxes for units of Assault Intercessors plus Space Marine Captains once more. There's no less than 3 of them there, all ready to jump out and use the Captain's finest hour to pummel anything on the midfield objectives to death. There's then a unit of Infiltrators, I'd guess likely to hold down the home objective and hopefully prevent enemies getting there. A single unit of Scouts for the mid-board control, 2 Gladiator Lancers as mentioned for some pretty serious anti-tank firepower, and 1 cheap unit of Inquisitorial Henchmen with a Demon Host attached. Just a cheap 50-point unit, I'd guess would be quite a nice one for popping up and doing secondaries, even more expendable than the Scouts. It is kind of fun to see an Impulsor heavy list doing this well. Most of the time in 10th edition they just really haven't been spammed all that much, maybe just been taken as 1 or 2 for a luxury. Feels like kind of Rhino Rush, but for Primaris. The Sanguinor does seem to be a staple and plenty of competitive lists. He's featured in the first 3 of these armies. The Blood Angel's Mysterious Guardian Protector clocks in at 140 points, so it's really quite a big investment. But for that cost, you do get a pretty terrifying lone operative, 7 wounds with a 2+ save, and a 4+ feel no pain to keep him safe. In close combat, he strikes with the Encarmin Broadsword, 8 attacks at Strength 6, AP 3, Damage 2, of course raising to 9 attacks at Strength 8 if you're on the charge in this detachment. The Sanguinor's big win is that once per battle at the end of the opponent's charge phase, if he's in reserves, you can select one enemy unit that made a charge move and just proceed to turn the tables on them, setting him up in engagement range of the enemy unit, and due to him having the Fights First special rule, it means that he'll get the first swing against them and not the other way around. Might depend a little bit on the army that you're facing, but that could be absolutely game-changing if he manages to do enough damage to cut down the enemy unit rather than your own unit being cut down themselves. You've just basically both destroyed enemy models and saved yours of quite a considerable number, and then in your turn he can go on to cause carnage. If you're playing a gunline or something, he could play quite differently and just be an extraordinarily fighty lone operative if you don't think that the enemy is likely to charge you in a meaningful way. Finally, for a 4th Blood Angels list that's been stomping the tournament scenes, this list by Chris Chance took 3rd at the Cherokee Open, going 4-2. I believe that was due to making the top cut and the way that the rounds worked there. This one's taking a few different choices with Inceptors, more Gladiators, and a big unit of Van Vets on the table. There's Lemartes and his 10 Death Company here once more, then a big unit of 10 Vanguard Veterans with their Storm Shields. They're headed up by a Jump Captain and a Sanguinary Priest. I'd guess they're both probably joining the same unit rather than the smaller units of the Jump Intercessors. Their attacks might only be damage 1, but that is going to be enough carnage to wreck most things. There's a Disruptive Lieutenant with a combi weapon, a Tech Marine that's escorting a Gladiator Reaper and 2 Gladiator Lancers, 2 units of Infiltrators to lock down areas from Deep Strike, one likely doing a home objective, and 2 units of Inceptors with Plasma, certainly paying a premium for their close range drop now, but they do drop down and do secondaries very reliably and can deliver some very scary damage exactly where your opponent doesn't want it. Seems that the Jump Captain takes Artisan of War as well for extra AP and a better save, so he'd be hitting extra hard there. Kind of fun to see a fairly different take there. Still a whole load of very scary jump infantry, even though smaller units of 5 jump intercessors are more than capable of skirmishing with most normal sized enemy units. Mortal wound impact hits, power fists at strength 10 and a bunch of volume attacks will do that. But they're definitely Blood Angels with a fair bit more firepower on the board with all those Gladiator tanks and these close drop Inceptors. In any case, it's kind of cool to see what sort of units and builds top Blood Angels players are using to get big results these days. I think it is pretty fun that Sons of Sanguinius does seem to be back at the fore on the tournament scene. The +1 strength seems to have been enough. I feel like it is kind of cool to see the Blood Angels with a good focus on the more standard jump infantry with chainswords. Though I do feel that plenty of collectors wouldn't mind the Sanguinary Guard being a bit better. There is a massive notable absence of them and Dante from any of these lists. Let me know your thoughts in the comments though, including any other insights that you might know about how these were played. I'm sure I've missed plenty given that none of these lists were mine. If you've enjoyed the video, then feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics. I'll certainly keep the regular 40k videos coming. I do tend to post new ones just about every day. Finally, if you have been enjoying all the videos on the channel, I would just like to mention that Auspex Tactics does have a Patreon page as well, and you can find that linked in the video description if you'd like to help support and keep these coming. Channel patrons do get a fair few advantages, seeing certain videos early, regular votes to see what sort of things happen next on the channel, and automatic entry into the regular prize giveaways with a chance to win some big model kits each month. If any of that sounds good to you, or you'd just like to help support, the link is down in the video description. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.